listening to All Things Video. This episode is brought to you by TubeBuddy, the complete toolkit for YouTube channel management. This power-packed Chrome extension helps with everything from bulk metadata edits and trending keyword suggestions to thumbnail optimization, fan engagement tools, and so much more. Our team at Bent Pixels uses TubeBuddy to manage channels for major brands like SeaWorld and Live Nation, as well as celebrities like Kevin Hart and Joe Rogan. They absolutely rave about the product, and I'm sure you'll love it too. Visit TubeBuddy.com to meet your new best friend on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in to All Things Video, a podcast dedicated to uncovering the past and charting the future of the online video ecosystem. I'm your host, James Creech, and today's guest is Ryan Bourne, founder and former CEO of AudioMicro, which has been repeatedly named to the Inc. 500's list of the fastest growing American media companies. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, Ryan, you have an extensive finance background and actually started your career at PwC. What attracted you to that path?
I actually entered college as an art history major, very creative background. I did finish college with an art history major and a studio art minor. And what was going to happen was I found out early that I was going to graduate in 3 years. Initially, I thought it was important to graduate faster. The faster you could get going into the career, the better off you'd be, right? You'll be 1 year ahead of the rest of the world, if you will. At some point, I realized in college that was actually not good, and that staying in college longer was a good idea because you didn't have to be in the real world. You could live the student life. And so I was like, I should pick up another major, because if I'm going to graduate in 3 years with art history and studio art minor, I should do something else that's more practical. So one day I was walking with a fraternity brother of mine across campus, and he said to me, my brother just got a job. And he told me the amount of money that it paid, and I was like, that's nuts. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And I said, what does he do? What is he majoring in? And he goes, he's an accounting major. And I was like, I can major in accounting. I want to make that kind of pay right out of school. And this was around the time when Enron had their scandal. And there was a huge rush for public accountants, for better auditing, for better Sarbanes-Oxley. Anyway, the next thing I know, I'm at a career fair. And they said, what are you majoring in? And I said, I'm majoring in accounting. This is before I'd even taken a class. And they said, well, would you like a summer internship? This is, again, before I said, okay, where do I sign up for? They're like, well, and it pays. And they told me the amount it pays. And I'm like, really? For a summer, it was just, the numbers were just mind-boggling to a guy who was going to major in art history.
That's great. So You've been an entrepreneur selling the dream even before it existed for many, many years.
Exactly. I was selling. And then, of course, I went back and did major in accounting. And I did take that internship. And what happened was after that internship, and I'll wrap up the loop here, they said, would you like a full-time job? And this was before I had even entered my senior year.
Wow.
So I already had a job lined up for after college.
And were you mostly picking up the accounting pieces on the job or learning through your classes simultaneously?
It's funny. I learned all on my own. I felt like I taught college was a sort of an exercise in teaching yourself, because you go to school way less than high school, and it's almost, all comes down to these exams, right? And so you really have to teach yourself the business. So I just grinded my way through it, if you will. So I had that job all lined up. I did it as long as I could, but this might sound like an interesting story, but the reality of it was I did not like it. And it wasn't a career for me. Mm-hmm. In fact, it hurt my stomach to come to work a number of times as I was working as an accountant or as an auditor. I really needed to get out of there. And so I ended up looking for my next gig, and I found a company called Wire Image, which was looking for an accountant. And I found them on Yahoo Hot Jobs. This was back when Hot Jobs was the big job board. I don't even know if people use Hot Jobs anymore, if they've shut it down or not. But anyway, they were looking for an accountant. And that was how I got my start in digital media, because what happened was Wire Image was licensing celebrity imagery. They were aggregating celebrity photos and licensing them to magazines, newspapers, blogs. At the time, blogs were emerging around the world. This is 2004. That sort of was my foray back into two things. One, I kept doing accounting, but I got to do it not instead of public accounting where you're auditing people and annoying them all day and kind of correct their books and fix issues with their financial statements. You're on the inside helping companies keep their controls straight and keep their books together and run their operations. But I was also able to get back into art because we were selling photos, and I looked at photos as art. I was able to sort of bring back home or back to myself that the combo of business and art at Wire Image as the controller.
And you have a background in photography and painting. Is that right?
That is, absolutely. So the painting came from all my sort of high school and college endeavors. I did a lot of oil painting, won some awards, the National Classic Art and Writing Awards. the Outstanding Achievement in Sculpture Award at Emory in college. But photography I actually got into at WireImage. So that's if you really want to know about photography, I'll quick because we can get down to business at a certain point. But one day after my first year at working at WireImage as a controller, I was in the office of the CEO and I said to him, it's around time for a bonus, right? And I basically said, I don't want a bonus. I said, here's what I'd like. I would like that camera that's sitting in the corner of your office. And I would like permission to take that camera out on my nights and weekends around New York City. I was living in New York, and to photograph events for the company, but only on my nights and weekends. Mm-hmm. So it won't interfere with my work, but I'll get to be a creator and a photographer. I had no idea how to use a camera. This is digital SLRs. Things are not like they are today, but this is 2005, 2004. This is probably the end of 04. There are no smartphone cameras or anything like that, like nothing. So the first thing I did is I took the camera home and I read the manual cover to cover. And I literally just taught myself photography, aperture, ISO, shutter speed, and got going. That's how it happened.
And do you still practice photography today? Are you still painting?
I mostly shoot my images of my child and our family, and mobile photography. The sophistication of these devices has really picked up. So I do still have an SLR, but I find myself less and less moving towards it. And the last celebrity event I shot celebrity events from end of 04 till 07.
What were some of the highlights?
Sorry, I guess I should say early 08. I shot the Met Gala in New York. I still get royalty checks. So Getty Images has 12,000 of my images. Anybody from, I had private parties with Sienna Miller to, red carpet events with Jennifer Lopez, Mick Jagger. The list goes on and on. At this point, it's like I've pretty much covered every celeb at the time that was hot. These days, the markets are pretty much.
And
12,000 photos. That's a lot of photos.
Was ultimately acquired by Getty Images?
Yeah. Okay. So Getty Images bought WireImage in 2007. The deal was closed in the middle of the year, and it was $208 million purchase. It was their largest acquisition, I believe. I still believe ever, but to date, it was definitely at the time. And it was a time when they were doing a good deal of M&A. They also bought iStock Photo in that same year. They also bought a company called Pump Audio, which was their venture into music licensing. They later on ended up swallowing up a company called Jupiter Media.
So right after that, you launched into starting your own venture, AudioMicro.
Yeah, that's right. When I was at WireImage, I was following the industry, kind of like, we all do when you're engulfed in something. You want to know what the trends are and what the competition looks like and what the landscape looks like and what's next. And so what I saw happening at WireImage was I saw the emergence of micro stock photography happening. And in short, that means companies like iStock Photo were emerging, Shutterstock, Fotolia out of Europe. And, I started reading these entrepreneurial articles about the next titans of photography, if you will. And these were still fairly small businesses, maybe in the sub 10 million revenue range at the time that they caught on my radar. And I thought, well, I would like to do that, or, we really should be doing that here, but we were not a micro licensing outlet. And the difference between micro licensing and traditional is that micro licensing, you're crowdsourcing content, anybody can contribute it to you, and your price point is pretty low. Typically $1, per piece of content, or sometimes or less, and it can also be obviously sometimes an up.
Is that an outright purchase, or is that some sort of rev share for royalties in the future?
It's a license so content providers provide their content to the platform. The platform licenses it out to users of that content, or customers, if you will, clients. They're not buying it outright. And typically a revenue share goes back to the content provider or the creator. If photo sells for $1, like the platform's taking 75 cents and you're only getting $1. But they've got so much volume these days, and they've aggregated all the customers that there is a living to be made in micro licensing. And certainly at a time there were people doing fairly well. But I'm not entirely sure today how microstock photographers fare. Meaning like if you can make 50 a year, 100 a year. I'm not really entirely sure where it falls out right now. That's microstock. And so I saw that happening in the industry. Of course, I wanted to do it. I thought we should be doing it at WireImage. WireImage is a little bit different because it's editorial licensing. It's licensing of celebrity photos. And you can't really crowdsource. Everybody thinks, you could just crowdsource those. Like everybody's got a smartphone. But you know what? Celebrities only go out in a few select places. They go out in New York. They go out in LA. They go out in London, they go out in Sydney, Miami, and Vegas, couple spots, and they're very controlled outings. So like the press credentials are there are only so many press credentials that get handed out. You're only a certain number of really good spots that get handed out so you can really get the good looks at those events. And at the end of the day, bottom line is you can't really that well crowdsource a celebrity microstock offering. And there are other reasons for that as well. I wanted to that was the first idea. So this is where I'm going with all this. This is where AudioMicro sort of came from. Was I wanted to build a celebrity microstock, and it actually was called Image Collect. And Image Collect Inc. was the first name of AudioMicro. So the vision had nothing to do with licensing of audio, and it absolutely had nothing to do with AdRev, which is where I think we're ultimately going to take the conversation, which is what really got big and what had all the value and why we had the nice exit. But we started Image Collect. And I was going to crowdsource celebrity, and all the things I just went through, I didn't know at the time. I just figured, you could just crowdsource celebrity photos and like it'll just take over the world of celebrity licensing, just like commercial photography had Microstock take over it.
So you learned the hard way.
I learned the hard way. And what it was is I couldn't get photos. So it's chicken before the egg thing. When you're building a marketplace, you need content in order to license, in order to have buyers for it. But if you don't have any buyers, no one's going to really want to provide you with any content. So that's obviously the challenge with starting one of these marketplaces. But at the end of the day, there is an answer to all that. You have to get the content. So you have to be able to, convince or work with the creators to get their content on spec at first in order to bring buyers to the table. So what I was trying to do is I was trying to get celebrity images, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get archives. People didn't want to sell them for an image for $1 each. They thought my price point was way too low. And they were like, I'm not going to sell my stuff for that low to you. Sorry, you seem like a good guy, but I needed a good million images to get going. And I couldn't get it. So I went to plan B, which was this other idea I had, which was let's do microstock instead of, but not in commercial photography. The first one was Image Collect, which was editorial photography. My next plan B was let's do microstock, but in music. And that's what AudioMicro is.
So you're originally from Nashville and grew up around the music industry. Is that part of what prompted that interest, or why the music?
It's a great question. I am from Nashville. My grandfather was a musician all of his life and a music teacher. I had zero education or interest in music throughout my entire life. So I happened to come from like this musical town and even a musical family, but none whatsoever. I'm just a straight up entrepreneur. And what ended up happening was I looked at music as content. And I said, if microstock photography has already taken off, Shutterstock, iStock Photo, Fotolia, they're doing great. I don't want to just follow in their footsteps. Celebrity photography, microstock, I couldn't get going. Ultimately, I did. But in 2008, 2007, couldn't get it going. What's another type of content that could be crowdsourced, that needs, typically gets licensed and is complex and needs a much more simple system? So music was that. Video was obviously an option. The reason I passed over video and looking back on it, it might have been a silly one because there is a ton of opportunity in stock video.
See what like Jukin and
Video Block, great entrepreneurs, both of those companies, great companies. I'm super impressed. But what at the time for me, I remembered the struggles we had with video at Wire Image. And the thing was, video was so big and clunky because storage was just not as cheap as it is today. Amazon S3 was still not where it's at, now. I guess it started.
Well, and even
probably
YouTube was new, right? In 2007, YouTube had just
still
barely been acquired by Google, still kind of building that reputation. So
absolutely. So I passed on video and I went to the next one, which I thought needed it, which was music. And the way I looked at when I started digging into music, I discovered that at least what I thought was that the music industry in terms of licensing, and what I meant by licensing was licensing content into video productions, because those are going to be the buyers for what's called a synchronization license. That was the market I was going after. It looked a lot like the photo industry did 10 years before Getty sort of came in and rolled in and wrapped up the photo industry. And also it looked like a lot like the photo industry did before microstock emerged, meaning it was fragmented. There were various players in the industry. You had to secure rights from multiple places. And if you're getting master recording, you might be getting that right from a label. If you're getting publishing rights, you might be getting that right from a publisher. You might be getting that right from 4 publishers. If it's a song that's co-writers or has various publishers with various different percentages on it. It just seemed like a mess. So I dug in. I think my naivete, even though I did, again, the musical city and the musical family, none of it was, I was just naive. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I think that worked to my advantage, because had I known how complicated it really is in the music industry, I might have been scared off by it. But I was just like, I'm going to make something happen. Like I'm onto I had caught the entrepreneurial bug at Wire Image. And the reality is I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I just didn't know it. Like I was always selling mixtapes as a kid, and like figuring out running lemonade stands, like figuring out ways to have, cash to take, to put gas in my car and or to go to concerts, right? Like I would just figure out a way to make it happen. I just thought that was like what life was. I was just like, you have to come up with ways to earn money.
Why do you think that is? Is that genetic? Is it part of your upbringing? What gave you the proclivity to want to be an entrepreneur?
I think, there's nature versus nurture with children. Are they just that way by nature, or can you instill in them certain traits?
Will your daughter be an entrepreneur?
I don't know. What I'd say is I think it was just in me. I don't know. At the end of the day, I didn't even know it. I didn't know the word entrepreneur until I was probably 25. And when I figured out that was what, the CEO of AudioMicro was, that he was an entrepreneur and he had built this business, and him and his co-founders and all of them were entrepreneurs. And I was like, that's what I am. But I've just been naturally like navigating my way through life like that.
What's the hardest part about starting your own company?
The single hardest part, having been through it now, I would say for me, there was a lot of isolation because I was the only founder of the business. I did not have co-founders. And
was that a conscious choice or just because you were out there trying to make something happen? Okay.
It was more of, AudioMicro got sold for $208 million and they had to slice the pie up like 7 ways. There was like quite a few co-founders there. And I was thinking, well, they all did great. It was a big number, so you can slice it 9 ways and it's still okay. For me, it was like, I don't know if I can slice it that many ways. But I ended up finding out pretty quickly once you raise venture capital and you take on the pie is sliced up anyway, right? You have an option plan and stuff. So it worked out great. But that was why. And so I'd say
bake more pies or bake a bigger pie.
That's right. That's right. You got to make your pie bigger. That's right. Or bake more pies. You got it. Looking back on the journey, I feel like I put a lot upon myself individually, and I worked so hard. And by hard, I mean like long hours too. There's just a lot of effort in there, and I took everything out of my personal life, like everything. In fact, I was listening to one of your interviews, recently, and there was another entrepreneur, and he talked about work-life balance, and I said, that is the kind of stuff I can preach today. But when I was in it, I had none of that. I mean, everything was on autopilot or automated. Anything that was a distraction or not business related, I would completely ignore, from home life to you name it, social life. That I think was the hardest thing for me. But at the end of the day, we had a great outcome. I need to learn to separate. So
let's talk a little bit more about what AudioMicro is, because there's so many different components. Can you break that down for us?
So AudioMicro Inc. is the corporate name. And I go back earlier to the story. It was originally called Image Collect Inc. When we got our first round of capital. The vision and business plan was around micro-licensing of music. So we renamed the company AudioMicro Inc. Now, that was cool. We renamed it, I think it was 2008. It's around September 2008 when that happened. That was when our first capital came in. It was $500,000 from DFJ, Frontier. The business became a crowdsourced music licensing solution, similar to iStock Photo for Music. Now, the price point wasn't around $1; it was actually quite a bit higher. And these days, it's around $50 for just for one-off license of a piece of music. So there was a little bit. It wasn't as micro as you think, but anyway, we ended up in early 2011. That business hummed along, and it did fine, but it really didn't show the growth that VC demands, let's just say. It wasn't, going to go under, but it also didn't look like it was meeting that hockey stick inflection point. So in early 11, we decided to try a pivot, if you will, to use one of the words that some people cringe at and some people don't. I'll use it. I don't love it, but I'll use it. We pivoted, and that pivot was into launching more marketplaces. So we had success in our audio marketplace. What we decided to do is we decided to launch Image Collect finally, because the celebrity market, I was able to aggregate celebrity photos at that time.
What changed?
What happened was the print industry got crushed between 2007, 8, 9, 10 to around 11, where people are, today they're still not buying, print, right? It's something like 30% of what it used to be, right? The amount of like newspaper, magazine. And so photographers' royalties declined along with that. A lot of photographers were used to $200, $300, $400 placements per single image in a magazine. And sometimes if it's a cover, it can be, tens of thousands of dollars, even hundreds of thousands, even millions if it's a huge exclusive. But anyway,
at that point, they needed more revenue streams, it sounds like.
They needed something. Yeah. And so they were willing to go to the digital world, and they were willing to try microstock in a lower price point to attempt to open up to a larger number of buyers. Because literally, if you wanted to buy a photo, if you want to license a photo, you have to call on the Getty way. You have to call Getty or Wireman. You have to get an account established with them. They have to give you download permissions. Then you download stuff. Then you publish stuff in your magazine, and then they invoice you. And then, 90 days later, you pay the invoice. This is like totally bizarre, like long, antiquated system. And digital, it's immediate on demand, but at the same time, like customers don't have to go through that screening process. If you call Getty and you're like, I want to use your photos, they're like, who are you? Where are you publishing? What does your publication look like? What's the size of it? Like a lot of like pre-screening, pre-qualification, which is rightful for them to do. I get it because they just don't want anybody to be accessing their images and taking stuff down and pirating it and abusing it. I just felt that you needed to open it up. All you got to do is watermark it online and sell it for a lower price point. It worked. And at that time, I was able to aggregate images. So we launched in our pivot Image Collect, Infographic Stock, which is an infographic marketplace, Cartoonsy, which was a cartoon marketplace, and Choose Tattoos, which is a tattoo marketplace. And we were aggregating tattoo art from tattooists and licensing that out to people that would want to go get their tattoo. They could try it on, try before you buy, if you will. You would download the print or the art. You could kind of size it up. You could show it to your local artist and say, this is the dragon I want you to do.
Well, that's clever.
And right.
Do you have any tattoos?
I do not. Another industry I entered with no experience, which I think is part of the reason why Choose Tattoos honestly didn't do that well. I think despite my lack of musical business experience, I have an interest in music. I think we all do. I think if you ask a room full of people like who likes music, I think every single person in music, or who likes chocolate chip cookies, like basically, right? Or maybe chocolate. Everybody raises their hands. Like music's one of those things. So there's some like drive towards it, but tattoos is like, no, I really didn't. I just wanted to make money, and it didn't work anyway. But here's where I'm going to wrap up the pivot story. Is at the same time we launched those, which was on stage, and you can watch the launch of those on YouTube. We were at the launch conference. So it was a first launch conference, which is now, pretty well hyped, and I'll follow all these investors. But back then it was fairly small, and Chris Sacca was a judge for my pitch.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you get to interact with him? Did he give you good feedback?
He gave me great feedback, and he was a very nice guy. And I got a tiny bit of interaction with him afterwards and told him I'd follow up. And of course, he never wrote back to me because I was probably just, small potato, like whatever, polite pass, if you will, right?
Maybe now you can be angel buddies.
Maybe. On the ride home, I remember from this launch conference, this is where the whole business changes. I know I'm sort of hijacking and just going on a rant here. I was driving. I had set a meeting with YouTube, and I went into that meeting hoping I could get a deal with YouTube where they, for instance, might have an audio marketplace and license, cleared music to their community.
YouTube would then be the customer.
YouTube's users would be the customer. YouTube, in and of itself, would be the distribution platform. So they would have a marketplace, just like they do today. They have an audio library.
They do, yeah.
Right.
Which they provide for free.
Correct.
How did they power that?
They did buyouts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So which angers creators in the music industry and to all ends, because they really just are giving away completely. AudioMicro literally competes with free. Like YouTube it became competition to me because they did a bunch of buyout deals, started giving stuff away for absolutely free to creators. And instead, you got to go to AudioMicro. You want to get a license, it's like between $50 and $300 depending on your use. I wanted to do that marketplace. And I thought, okay, here's how we're going to build a business. They're going to do a marketplace. It's going to be powered by us. Our content through our API. It'll be on youtube.com/, for instance, music or audio library, where they ended up putting it, I think, now. And we can go retire on a private island because there'll just be so many transactions going on YouTube. Business blows up. DFJ gets their money back. I get my, I don't become a failed entrepreneur. And right. That's the dream. But what ended up happening in that meeting?
Wait, real quick to set the stage. You're in San Bruno?
I was in San Bruno.
Okay. And who are you meeting with at YouTube?
I got the meeting. It took me 2 years to get this meeting. Let me start by saying it was called this was like a junior guy, but he, even junior folks there are like super sharp because they're Google people, right? But anyway, I had emailed them cold. You can't contact YouTube. Like if you want to get a meeting with YouTube, you're screwed. And LinkedIn wasn't like it is today either back then. Like you can't just even hunt down the title of the guy or gal and the name of the guy or gal and even attempt to maybe guess their email. Like you're just not getting into YouTube. You have to network your way in there. So I had brought on a board member who knew someone at Google Ventures and said, I'm a board member of a portfolio company that has a music library. They could I think there's a really, solid partnership that can be negotiated or discussed at least. Can you take a meeting at least? And he emailed that person at Google Ventures. That person at Google Ventures contacted someone at YouTube. Someone at YouTube had a more junior folk take the meeting. And I go to this meeting. Here's my pitch. You guys are going to have an audio marketplace. We're going to power it. You're going to use our API. Everything's cleared. All your creators are no longer going to have copyright problems ever. All those takedowns from all the major music labels are going to stop happening. Everybody's going to be happy. You'll sell them for $1 a piece. 50 cents will come back to us. We'll pay our creators too. I could tell like 5 minutes into the meeting, it was just not happening. It was totally not happening. And like, you can just feel it out. Like, it's like, okay, we've thought of that maybe, or whatever it was. And it was just like, and I'm like fishing for things to keep this conversation going, because this is YouTube, right? Like this is where it can all happen. And what ended up happening was he said to me, like almost as like a consolation prize, he goes, let me ask you a question. Of all your music that's currently in YouTube videos, what percentage of it would you say was licensed from AudioMicro, legitimately? And what percentage of it would you say was pirated, stolen, copied, whatever phrase you want to use, but wasn't paid for? I just, my best gut was like 10-1 pirated. I mean, it really is, because people have a hard time, I think, paying for a music license. Like, it's just not something that comes that easy for them to consumer to, whip out their wallet for. He said, well, we have a new system coming out, or system, I forget if it was new at the time, or it was in fairly nascent stages, and it can allow you to find the music that's being used in YouTube videos. And if you want to, you can take those videos down. But if you really want to, you could monetize those videos and actually partake in the advertising revenue. You can leave the videos up and partake in the advertising revenue stream that comes around along with them. Would you like, access to the system, essentially? I mean, this is kind of how it was framed. I don't think those were his exact words or anything like that. And I was like, yes. Where do I sign? And he's like, well, we'll email you a contract. And I'm like, well, no, I'll sign on this napkin, like right here, right now, because I want, but really what happened was I was so excited was because a light went off in my head immediately, which was not only did I need this tool, but I knew that everybody in the music industry wanted this tool, or should have been in this meeting, if you will. And I ended up walking out the door in San Bruno, and on my 6-7 hour drive back to LA, I made phone calls the entire time and literally called every music library that I had networked with in the first 3 years of AudioMicro. I had met all the major music rights holders and tried to get them to work with me. And they were like, no, we don't want to sell our stuff for low price point on AudioMicro. Like, we're not really that interested in it. But we like you, Ryan. If you have another idea, come back and let us know. This time I was calling them going, hey, I know you didn't want to do AudioMicro with me. I get it. Like, your stuff's too good. It's a much higher price point. Like, I'm not, bugging you about that. I would really like to administer your YouTube for you. I will build technology and tools around the system that YouTube has, and I will help monetize your catalog and enforce your rights, take down videos from time to time where appropriate, keep them up, when you want them up, and squeeze as much juice or help you optimize your earnings, make as much money as you can. And so the AdRev was born right then. And we initially called it the AudioMicro AdRev program, or like ad revenue program. Like the AudioMicro ad revenue program. And I was in a meeting with a client one day, and he was just like, you got to really rebrand this. And I'm like, what is it? Oh, it's ad revenue. Okay. Is adrevenue.com available? Of course not. But adrev.net, $10, 5-letter domain. Bam.
Jumped on
AdRev.
The system, the YouTube system you continue to refer to is Content ID. And to give listeners a little bit of background on that tool, it uses audio and visual fingerprinting and watermark technology to detect copies of a reference file. In your case, an audio track. In other cases, maybe a video asset. And if it detects that content belongs to another rights holder, is pirated, or is a violation of copyright, it will then allow the rightful owner to apply a policy, which means they can monetize it, they could issue a takedown notice, they could block it in certain areas, etc.
Absolutely. That's the system. It became known as the Content ID system, and everything you said is accurate. Yep. You put a fingerprint in, you can then find every YouTube video that either audio or video that contains a matching portion of that. And there are some limitations to it. Despite its limitations, it does work at the end of the day, function very well.
Especially for audio. I absolutely agree. It sounds like you were very early and you recognized the opportunity to administer the rights for these other traditional music rights holders. And then you were building software around it to complement the Content ID system. So tell us a little bit more about the tools you developed.
The first tool we developed was a mass ingestion tool. So a difficult part about the Content ID system, if you're a large rights holder, large meaning you have a very substantial number of copyrights, individual pieces kind of, so let's just say you have 10,000 videos, or let's just say you have, I had a client, 250,000 recordings. If you want to get that into YouTube system, it's not simple. If you want to get one file in, okay, believe it or not, they have a WYSIWYG onesie uploader. I mean, anybody can drag and drop an MP3 file or an MOV file and fingerprint one. But you got 250,000 at the time. Really, and I still feel it's this way, I'm a little bit out of it, but it required, you had to script your way in. Okay. And not only do you have to use, scripting, XML scripting and around music, there's complicated setup because you have to ingest a master recording. And then a lot of times you'll also need to set up a publishing asset too that relates to that master recording. So,
and all the associated metadata, right?
All the metadata from each side. There's metadata on the recording side. There's metadata on the publishing side. They have to be also, again, pointed or married to each other so that both parties are getting paid appropriately. And in my client base, I had a lot of clients that were both recording. They owned both the recording and the underlying composition or publishing rights because they were production music libraries who typically, if you're doing stuff for sync, meaning you're placing stuff into videos, both sides are required. So a lot of my clients already had both rights. So we built a whole tool around ingesting huge volumes of content. And the content could come to us through Dropbox. It could come through us through Box.com. It could come through us through Hightail, which used to be called WeTransfer. It could come to us through FTP. So we could give our clients an FTP Dropbox for themselves. We could pull it from their FTP. Literally, they would sometimes email stuff in. It sounds nuts. DVDs or CDs.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. And then of
beta
course,
tapes.
And honestly, beta tapes. But the more popular one was hard drives.
Sure.
So thumb drives, and it lately became thumb drives when you can fit 64 gigs on a thumb, or more. Hard drives of content would show up, and we would their metadata would come in all kinds of formats. The reason we kicked butt, one of the reasons, was we're really easy to work with. Normally if you want to deliver, copyrights to a client, a content ID administrator, I would think they'd be like, well, here are specs. You need to have your data in these rows and these columns and your files in these formats. We would go, no. Send us exactly what you have that's sitting around the office in whatever format it's in. We will throw it into our engine and determine what, if anything, additional needs to be reformatted for it to be ingested. And most of the time, it would just, our scripts and our own technology would encode.
Very smart.
And it made it very simple. That was a great part about working with us. So we ended up growing extremely rapidly. And I spent 4 years from 2011 until August 2015 when, the company had been acquired. And I've since, moved on, although I do remain an advisor to the business. Just selling and obviously building out a great team, a wonderful team around myself. I had a great right-hand man in Noah Becker, who's continuing to run a lot of operations at the company, and a great team in general, great finance team, finance director and Peter and operations guy and Ben. But selling was what made it successful. So for 4 years, it was deal closing, showing them our ingestion.
How did you learn that? I mean, you were just out there hustling, or did you have any background in sales?
I think I have a natural instinct for sales. And I think being an entrepreneur sort of just made it really come out. But for me, at the end of the day, it's all that matters. It's really all that matters in business success. It's not all that obviously in life. Come on. But if you want your business to take off, you've got to sell. You got to sell hard all day and be on all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think I maybe 1,000 deals. I literally would close a deal a day was my goal for 4 years straight. Yeah. So I think we got close to, I didn't end up with a deal a day, but it was close to that.
What are the takeaways? You mastered the sales process at some point. What are the things that just, you really learned through that experience?
Well, I think trust and transparency flat out. Okay. So what I saw in the YouTube ecosystem at the end of the day, I still feel like I see it to some extent. I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything like that. I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but there is a lot of smoke and mirrors, is what I was about to say. They're just basically businesses that they're not entirely 100% forthcoming with exactly what they're doing. And that was just not our way. We were just very straight up about it. We're going to take your recordings. We're going to use our ingestion technology, ingest them in the system. And I didn't fully answer your tech question. We built a huge accounting and royalty reporting system around that. It was very robust, allowed them to see their earnings, see all the videos that contain their music and all kinds of stats around those videos, which was novel at the time. Everybody talks about it now, but we were really early in that. And we were just very straight up, we're going to do this for a small administrative percentage. AdRev advertises on our self-service platform that it's 80-20 split. So, that's for self-service, and full-service clients, which were bigger rights holders, we would typically, we would typically bend a little bit, and we could offer them a little bit better than an 80-20. And we were just very, straight up about what we were doing. We're fingerprinting your stuff within the system. If there's anybody that's a legitimate licensee that gets claimed, we're going to work to whitelist them. We're going to work to release their claims. And we're going to work to make sure it doesn't happen with them again and kind of keep the peace, explain to them why it occurred, explain to them the importance of protecting copyright, even for them as a legitimate licensee of it. Why'd they get a claim? Well, if you didn't get claims, everybody could just take this content, and then why would you even bother paying for it? Why did you spend, a couple $1,000s on a music license if anybody could just take it and there was no, enforcement around it? So walking them through the value of things, that's what made us different. And that's and that's part of the sales discussion. But there's a certain rapport you build with people. You just got to be, I think, straight up. Like if you're yourself and you're a likable person, I guess that has something to do with it, and you are honest and transparent with people through the sales process, like this is a business deal, so obviously there's something in it for us. We're gonna have to take some to keep the lights on, the office for our service. You're gonna get, the lion's share of it, and we're gonna be, a lot of our business was service based. So, how quickly we respond, how, involved we are in understanding their needs and following up with them. And
listening is a huge component of it, right?
Listening, coming up with new monetization opportunities for them. Custom reports can vary for big media and big rights holders. They have all kinds of deadlines, right? They have all kinds of budget meetings. They have all kinds of things that are going on, and they need something prepared for them about their YouTube presence and regarding their stats, for instance. I'm, kind of being broad about it. And we would do these sort of just custom reports that would end up going into like board packages for other companies, and like that being their partner and delivering that. But there's no charge for that. That's just baked into like our service, So those kinds of things, I think, really differentiated us and really kept clients happy.
So to rewind, you went into this YouTube meeting, which could have ended in disappointment and dejection, but you had this light bulb moment where you realized, hey, there's a 10-to-1 business opportunity with the amount of my content which is being copied versus, what is being properly licensed. And this could absolutely apply to a much broader market. And then you just chased after that with full force on the sales side. So AdRev became kind of the breakout success of AudioMicro, and as you touched on, was ultimately acquired by Zealot Networks for a little upwards of $20 million late last year. So how did you come about that, and why did you feel they were the right partner?
That's all accurate. There's press stories out there about we sold a majority of the business for over 20. So of course the whole business was valued at larger than that. So how did the exit come about, or how did we choose Zealot as our exit partner?
Yep.
I watched Wire Image succeed and how it grew, and its, year over year, quarter over quarter growth rates, and its ultimate timing and exit to Getty Images for $208 in 2007. Now, what happened after 2007? The market peaked. Eventually, the real estate, market crashed. The stock market crashed. The whole world looked like it was crumbling. And what I learned from that was that, in short, things move in cycles. And timing is everything. And selling a business for a large multiple may have a lot to do with what I would call hopping off the train at the right time. And in fact, I wrote some blog posts. I used to blog. I haven't probably updated my blog in ages, but I used to blog. And at some point I wrote one called hopping off the train at the right time. And it was a story about Dig and how Dig could have exited for I think over $1 billion. And remember what happened to Dig? It became worthless. Really, it did. It's kind of a sad story, if you will. I'm sure there's a lot of fun lessons learned, positive takeaways, but I didn't want that to happen. And we were growing very rapidly. So as you mentioned, we were ranked. So we were 2013, we were on the Inc. 500, fastest growing media, number 2 in media in 2013. We were number 2 in media again in 2014. We were number 5 in media just in 2015. Now, it's called the 2015 Inc. 500, but it's actually based on your 2014 numbers, if there's any confusion around it. And, those growth multiples to be, a fastest growing media company in the US, or even, let alone any ranking system, even in LA or even in downtown or something, is good, right? And what I look at is you can't, it's almost impossible to recreate those things forever, that kind of growth forever. And it's also almost impossible to do that without capital infusion. So we had only raised $1.25 million. And as we touched on earlier, that's still, but the multiple that I raised at, okay, it's only $1.25 million, but it was a very low pre-money valuation, very low. And I won't say exactly what it is, but let's just say very low. And so I didn't necessarily want to take on more capital. We were a cash flow positive and profitable business, and we were about break even in 2011, and then positive all going forward from there. And I didn't want to take on more capital. So what I'm getting at is continue to grow like that seemed very difficult. So I felt like looking for a buyer seemed like a good idea, simply from a metrics perspective. If there's any time to probably exit, it's when, the growth is at this pretty wild state. So I pursued a number of acquisition discussions. I did not use an iBanker.
And why is that?
That sort of hits on a lot of things about me, which is that, for better or worse, which is that I'm very scrappy. and very frugal with the business. We did not have a Class A office space. We were very, very, very sort of cost efficient. We did not have a lot of bloat. There were not a lot of company perks. There are not a lot of time theft, if you will, like what I would call, lazier or unpresent employees. Everybody worked really hard and contribute to an effort. And so anyway, that's kind of the mentality of why I didn't want to use an iBanker was like, I didn't want to give. Typically they want whatever it is, X% of the transaction. I think it's in the single digits, but it can be probably anywhere from 2 to like 5. I don't know. And then they usually want a retainer. Let's call it a couple $100,000 or even, it could be even $50,000, whatever it is. It's somewhere in that range. And I was like, I'm not writing a check for that. Like I'll go, I know who I think the buyers are. I'll go solicit them on my own, or in some instances, they were just landing in my inbox already. So for better or worse, I went and did that. And
you have a basic understanding of finance from your background.
Yes.
And were there any risks that you were worried about of potentially not running the process the right way or getting the potential outcome that you wanted from that acquisition process?
I think if I could go back and do it again, I probably actually would use a banker.
Okay. So, and why is that?
Because I think I might have found a broader base of potential buyers. But not to say that actually I didn't find the right one, because I do feel like it went to the right home. But I think that we might have gotten a larger bidding process. That's all I'm getting at. Sure. Broader bidding process.
Understood.
Yeah. But I worked it on my own. I had a number of potential, acquirers and term sheets. And eventually the Zealot was the best one to go with. The tiny bit of background on that is so Zealot really started, it's such a big company right now. Like it's huge.
They've made something like 18 acquisitions in the past 12 months.
Absolutely. That's gotta be careful about what their public numbers are, but they're big, right? 18, right? So yeah, I just don't know what's out there and what's not, but we were there first. And so in a way, Zealot really is AdRev, AudioMicro Inc., if you will. What happened was Zealot was formed, and Danny Zappin, who is the founder of Maker Studios and the founder of Zealot, he capitalized Zealot initially as if you will, shell company with a good deal of there was some outside investor money, and there was, I think, a good deal of his. And then it bought my business. And so it's not, I shouldn't say Zealot is AdRev, but Zealot was their capital that then bought AdRev, that then snowballed into 18 other acquisitions and other capital. At this point, it's like this giant company with balls of various capital and stakeholders and things like that. But we were the initial business, and we were, we'll hit the 500 again. It'll come out in the 2016, numbers, but we're continuing to grow really rapidly. And we had nice cash flow. We had a very nice balance sheet. We're a very healthy business. And we had a nice P&L too. And I think that I think it was a very good deal for both parties. I'm certainly, very grateful and very thankful to Danny and to the Zealot team for buying the business and for continuing to kick butt with it. They're going to continue to turn it into, what it should be, which is a rights management powerhouse.
Great success story on both sides.
Thank you.
And it's exciting to see what Zealot will do in the future. I love the name, and as you said, they're doing big things. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? As you look at the media landscape, you said you've kind of entered retirement, but exploring what's out there and continuing to stay active. So, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I'm kind of kidding with the retirement. I've taken the last 2 months off. I stepped down from the company and took an advisor role. So I've sort of day to day.
Was that a hard thing to do?
It's very hard, emotionally and psychologically. And look, I don't expect any anybody to feel sorry for me or anything like that. It's like not, but it's hard. You do well financially, but it doesn't change you as a person. You still have, feelings and love for things. And I just have a lot of love and pride for the business that I started out of my apartment 8 years ago and turned into a great lasting company. And the hardest part is stepping away from the team. It's just such great people. So if AdRev teams ever listening to this, I miss you guys, and that was the hardest part. The day-to-day, look, there's some burnout. You go at something for 8 years, as hard as I did, you eliminate all those things from your personal life like I had done, and you only focus on business. And it was time for me to be with my family and to really kind of step up my role in the home and take a step back. So it's been a little boring because your mind's, as an entrepreneur, I'm really searching for some stimuli. I've had enough time to kind of also, get in shape and again, just sort of be around the house and be a dad and a husband. But it's weird just because no one, when you're CEO of a company, everybody wants to talk to you, right? Everybody wants to do deals, right? And you're sort of, there's a lot of activity around you, and you walk in, there's a certain pride about like, oh, I'm CEO of this business that I built, especially if you're the founder of it, I think. Like if you're a hired CEO, maybe it's a little different, but and now I don't have that. I'm like a guy that was the CEO. I founded a company and it got really big, and we sold it and did well, and there were some employees did well too. I'm no longer that guy. I'm just like, the people are like, what do you do? It's like, so people are like, well, what do you do now? And then you're like, I'm not doing anything. And then you kind of feel like a loser, like in a weird way. You're like, I'm not doing anything. Like, no, I literally like don't do anything. I'm like reading the news, like that's what I do. Right. Such a big part of your identity. So that's what I would say. It can be it's an emotional challenge that I think I need to get through, and I'll be through it pretty soon.
And do you think you'll start another business? You want to continue to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think I don't want to go I only two things I know in life: media, content licensing, and accounting. So I think if I stray too far from that, I don't have any background. It'd be a real learning process, if you will. In fact, I might even need to go back to school. So the chances are that I'll probably, find something that keeps me stimulated in the content licensing or media world. I also obviously can do it from a different level. I can do it from an investor level. I could fund another business. I could buy a company and grow it from there. So I'm open to anything, but right now I'm really just trying to look back and reflect, kind of do some investment planning and that kind of stuff, and just also advise and just make sure those guys are still doing a good job at it.
Terrific. You also serve on the board for LAVA, the Los Angeles Venture Association. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I did. I haven't been that active because as part of sort of eliminating things, as AdRev grew like crazy, it was one of those things where I felt like I couldn't be as involved. So I haven't been as active. But LAVA, what I will say, is an amazing organization, and it's what got me funded. So when this will tie it all together. You asked me about shooting photos and things like that. When I first moved to LA, I needed some money because I was actually, in between. Wireman had gotten acquired, and I moved from New York out here. So I used to photograph events on nights and weekends, like I was saying. And I went to a LAVA event trying to get interested in the Los Angeles venture community, and I met the team at LAVA, and I ended up sort of volunteering, if you will, at one of their events as their photographer. And it was a VC related event. It was like Meet the VC, and they have a Meet the VC event every year. And it's a great event. And I encourage any entrepreneur to go to LAVA's Meet the VC if you want to get your feet wet. And what I was doing was I was photographing the Meet the VC event. So maybe I got a comped ticket, but I was a scrappy entrepreneur. I mean, back then it was probably a $50 ticket. Like, that's great, $50 saved. So all I got to do is take photos. But anyway, I went up to DFJ Frontier partner Scott Lynette there and took his picture. And after I took his picture, I said, can I pitch you on my startup idea? And I pitched him on AudioMicro. And 6 months later, we had that first $500,000 investment. So
pays to be scrappy.
LAVA photography, it pays to be scrappy, and it pays to get out there and hustle, and it pays to be involved in that organization. So I ended up moving my way up to being an entrepreneurial board member and sort of helping them behind the scenes. And they've been thriving, but I've been less involved since the business took off.
You've also been active as an angel investor in Internet Marketing Inc., New Condos Online, and others. What do you look for when making investment decisions?
Wow. So I made an angel investment. I'll just walk you through my history real quick just to get them straight. I did make an angel investment in WireImage, which turned out to be 1 year later, literally just over a year, maybe it was a year and a month, it got sold to Getty, just enough for long term. And I was like, wow, these angel deals, I should be doing them. This was when I didn't have any money. I was just kid living in New York, and I thought having an extra 20 grand in your bank account, I'll be a hotshot angel. And I invested in the company that I was the controller of because I knew our numbers were good. So I felt good about that. So I was I put the money in those founders and in us because I had visibility, right? I had information rights and visibility. New Condos Online investment was literally for a friend of mine. And it was just a guy, I just knew he would be a good entrepreneur. It just felt right. It was a fraternity brother, and I gave him a small amount of, I think that was $25K. I think Wyman was $40K or something like that. He ended up actually it's sort of an odd situation, but he ended up pivoting that into Internet Marketing Inc. So I ended up with shares in both companies, kind of I was one check, but I got shares in both. And Internet Marketing Inc. is one that took off. And it became, at first, New Condos Online took off, and it was one of San Diego's fastest growing companies, but then the real estate market crashed, and that business really didn't do too much. But Internet Marketing Inc., he pivoted out of that into doing paid SEM, organic SEM campaigns. Now he does all kinds of stuff, from even influencer campaigns, I believe. That business got really, really big. He made the Inc. 500 a couple times. And so what I would say is that was just a going with the gut. To answer your question, was going with the gut. But lastly, I read, and I don't know if you read, and I think it just rings true to kind of really answer your question. Jason Calacanis recently wrote in his newsletter about what has made him a good angel investor. And it was basically, I'll try and sum it up, I might mess it up, but it's basically this. It was, I invest in founders. And the idea doesn't make a difference. And it's people that are going to persevere and can get through the difficult. And look, if somebody's done it before, like me, that's why I think it's so much easier. If I want to get capital together, it's just so much easier because I've been through it. But when I was getting started, it was like, what are the traits that Scott Lynette saw in me that made him feel that way? And I don't know what it is, but I have that perseverance. I know from the other side, I would only angel invest in a guy that I just thought would never give up. Ever give up, will stop at nothing to make it happen. And pivots are important. It's one thing to never give up on a stupid idea that's going to fail. That's bad. Mm-hmm. Like, don't go working on something that's ultimately going to fail. You need to have perseverance, but like at a certain point, you got to have the wisdom to know that it's not working. Like at AudioMicro, it was okay, but like I knew we needed to do other things. And what I did was I kept them all in the same business. So I never bailed on my investors. I said, look, guys, they invested in me. If I'm going to pivot into Image Collect, Infographics, Cartoonsy, which all shut down except for Image Collect, then, and I'm going to pivot into AdRev, that's all going to be one company. And so when we had an exit, AdRev was one that took off, but our initial investors, they participated. They did great. It was over like 10x return. I would invest in a guy with the same sort of perspective, which is like, he's going to pivot. He's going to stay true to the investors. He's going to do whatever it takes to make it happen and ultimately get you your return back, and not just sort of work on side projects, right? Or like take his eye off the ball.
What has been your greatest failure as an entrepreneur, and what did you learn from it?
I have a lot to learn in the home. And I think as an entrepreneur, if I could have failed in an area, it would be, just being a better brother, father, husband, and just being so laser focused on work all the time. I think that look, it had a great outcome. I might have done it differently.
Wow, that's really powerful. I think it's great that you are aware of that and want to work on that. A lot of people probably wouldn't go to that answer, but I think that's important. We all need to kind of keep that in perspective.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you were starting a business in digital media today, what would you do?
Well, am I investing in a business or it's just like what trend would I latch on to?
Sure. If you were going to go out, start a business in digital video, in the music space, what would you want to wake up every day and tackle?
I'd say this. I'd want to work with good people, and I'd want to work on something fun and new. What I would do, for me, this is my answer, and this is not advice for which someone else should do. I've always been a distributor and administrator of content. So I built platforms, even from working at WireImage, where we had a platform for distributing still imagery, to AudioMicro, a platform for distributing audio, to AdRev, administering copyrights and YouTube system, building a lot of tech. I actually have never, even though I go back to my art and I talk about being, a sculptor and a painter, I have never really been a maker of digital content. And so I think if I could do something fun, it might be partnering with an owner or maker of content and helping them on the distribution administrative side, but together. Instead of me just building a distribution platform and having lots of partners come in, that would be fun for me. I'm not going to say it's necessarily going to be, but I would like to figure out a challenge within the maker themselves and how we can just blow them up and make them as much money as they possibly can and make them, financially successful in that regard.
I hope you get a chance to do it. That sounds like fun. So what recommendations or advice do you have for people listening? Just to close things out, top 3 things you would recommend.
Keep your body healthy, your back in particular. So your posture, the chair you sit in, be comfortable, because we all slave away at these machines. And over the long run, they will beat you down. And I learned it the hard way. So, after the business, it was like I spent, 90 days in chiropractic, literally like twice a week, and I feel great now. So that work and keep your body healthy. So going to the gym and work out your legs. For those guys out there that do a lot of arms and think that they're working on the mirror muscles. Yeah. Work out the lower body is way more important. At the end of the day, execution is all that matters. And like, I'm not that much for small talk. And I think I'm just all about go and do. Like, that's the hardest part. And so, you have to take action. What are the 5 action items you're going to do today that are going to move the needle forward as much as possible? And so just work on those action items and get them absolutely done. And I would just say be curious. From accounting to, getting my way into photo licensing and ultimately into music licensing, like dig deep in various areas and don't try not to get too pigeonholed, but master certain skills and then move on to others, like basically what I'm getting, I would never survive as like a corporate lawyer. Like I could do it, but I would know the skills, but I would just drive myself nuts after a certain period of time. So be prepared to sort of hop among skill sets between every 2 and 5 years. And look, for me, it was hard work. So work, I'm sure you'll hear that all the time, but like put down the TV, shut it off. Don't watch the NFL. I love Tennessee Titans, but I can watch them now. But like, I didn't watch them for years. Ignore it. It's not important. You spend your weekends, you grind away to business, you grind away to an idea. You're going to get it. I used to work Thanksgivings. I used to work Christmas. I didn't care. I was bored. I was so bored on Thanksgiving. All I wanted to do is get back to work, and that hard work is what, if my advice is, do you want to have an exit over, end up with a nice, financial outcome, those are the things that I did to get there.
And where can people find more about you?
So you can, ryanborn.net is my personal blog. If you go to the contact page and scroll down, my email is just listed there, but I'll give it to you. It's ryan.l.born, B-O-R-N, @gmail. Born Ryan on Twitter, or ryanborn.net is probably the best way to get me, or really just shoot me an email. And actually, my phone number I think is listed there. You can even text message me. So wow. It's a Google Voice number, but I'll read it. It's a text. So yeah.
So you were very open to.
Yeah, but absolutely. Hit me up. I love it. For sure. Cool. Anything from ideas, advice, or you got angel things to pitch, or you just want to know if, sink or swim kind of thing, hit me up anytime, folks, on the interwebs.
Ryan, this has been so much fun. Thank you again for being on the show. I absolutely loved it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for tuning in. I'm James Creech, and this has been another edition of All Things Video. If you like what you hear, we hope you'll share and subscribe for new episodes. See you next time.